Welcome to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4. This is called Gyana Yoga. Titled it as Gyana Yoga. And in this we're going to be covering the understanding of spirituality through knowledge. How does knowledge help us on the path of spiritual progress or spiritual advancement? So let's dive into it. Knowledge of the absolute, knowledge of the divine, all of that is covered in here. The chapters up till now that we've covered have been about the understanding of Karma Yoga. We've understood about the soul. We've understood something about how the Bhagavad Gita originated. We've gone through a few things in the earlier chapters. And now we're going to dive into the actual nitty-gritty of it all. So you're going to see some really powerful information today. So let's start with the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4. Bhagavan Sri Krishna said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to Vivaswan, the sun god, who instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, who in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. Let's go back a little bit over what he's saying here. Krishna is talking about speaking the science of the Bhagavad Gita. So he first refers to it as the imperishable science. Interesting. Science that we know of in this world is constantly changing. But this science he refers to as an imperishable science. And at the same time, he points out something contrasting. That is, he taught this science to Vivaswan. Vivaswan is the sun god. In fact, what he's indicating is he taught this at the beginning of creation. Vivaswan passed the knowledge on to Manu. Manu is known as the father of mankind. Almost like you have in Abrahamic religions where Abraham is that. So, just as you have the concept of someone being the original, well, I don't know if it was Abraham or it was Adam who's considered the father of mankind in the biblical stories, but here you have Manu. Manu is known as the person who actually puts down the codes for how humanity is meant to live. Actually, the whole concept of the Vedas is this, that when creation takes place, we are not just left here with no guidelines, with no idea of how we should live. Rather, we are given very clear indications as to how we need to progress in our being here as human beings. Our being here is not random. Our being here is not accidental. It is not a result of some big bang that occurred and then suddenly here we are trying to figure things out and evolving from apes and monkeys. That's a lovely fairy tale. But hey, if we're going to believe in some kind of fairy tale, let's try listening to some other possibilities. Here is a possibility that perhaps makes even more sense than all the scientific one, at least to me, and I'd like you to consider it. That what if there was an actual creator, and if that creator, when this world was created, sent us here for a certain purpose, and that purpose was for us to spiritually evolve and grow, just like you send your kids to school. And what if, along with sending us here, all the instructions were given, the lessons were there, everything was given very clearly, how you need to live, what you need to do, what is the path, and the options were given. You weren't just told, oh no, you got to do it one way and there's no other way. No, there were a series of paths. Just like when you go to university, you can choose to be in the sciences or the arts, or you can be in so many different fields, and so many different options are given to you. In much the same way, the Bhagavad Gita presents us with a series of choices, courses that we could take, paths that we might prefer, ones that are most aligned to us. For each soul, there is a different path. Unlike the Abrahamic religions which talk of only one way to God, the Bhagavad Gita thinks of every person being on their path. And every path is like a river that comes and merges into the ocean. And so in that way, every path is valued. Every person's journey is honored. And there is no one who is on the wrong path, including someone who may have gone astray, who may have gone completely off tangent, may have become completely hateful of spirituality or God or anything like that. All of them are on their path, as you'll see now. So Krishna is starting to talk about a information that he gave in the beginning of creation that was handed down in a disciplic succession. And as that information was lost over time, he says that he is here to reinstate it. He says, that very ancient science of yoga is today told by me to you because you are my devotee as well as my friend. Therefore you can understand its transcendental mystery. Now you might wonder, well, why does one have to be a devotee or a friend or something like that? Because your friend is willing to understand things that you may not. Your friend is willing to be receptive. Right? So Arjuna is devoted to Krishna and therefore his devotee, and at the same time he is a friend. What greater combination can there be? People often think in terms of God as someone, who's out there on some throne or something like that, and therefore cannot be approached. But Krishna makes it very clear. I want you as my friend. I'm not looking to be in a position of being some great person, a God who sits on a throne. No. I want a relationship with you. I want to be your friend. I want to be your lover. I want to be your child. Parent if you prefer. Or I just want you in my life somehow or other. So he's referring to Arjuna as his very, very dear friend. And he says, because of that bond, because of that connection, I want to reveal this knowledge to you. And just as he reveals it to Arjuna, it is now being revealed to you in that line of disciplic succession. As I have learned it, and as I now pass it on to you, we continue learning in much the same way, without making things up, without just trying to stay as true as possible to the original intention and teaching of the Bhagavad Gita as Krishna presents it. So at this point, Arjuna makes a very interesting comment, and he asks Krishna, he says, the sun god Vivaswan is so much older than you, right? He's senior by birth to you. How am I to understand in the beginning you instructed this science to him? See, Arjuna is not going to just take things lying down. He's not just sitting there trying to believe every word that Krishna is saying. He's like, wait a minute. What is this you're telling me? How is this possible? At that point, Bhagavan Sri Krishna replies, and this is a really important point which I make in every one of our Bhagavad Gita classes, but for those of you that are new, I'd like to reiterate that. Bhagavan Sri Krishna, Bhagavan Uvacha is the way it is spoken, is written in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavan refers to the Supreme Being, right? One who is the cause of all causes. Means whatever is the causation of the world, this being is the cause of all of that exists. Right? Sarva Karana Karanam is the cause of all that exists, and of all that is happening, and all that will happen. Right? Of all knowledge, and of all that we are. So it's very fascinating, this word Bhagavan, the one who possesses all knowledge, all beauty, all fame, all wealth, all renunciation. That is Bhagavan. All knowledge means who knows everything. And today we're going to talk about this knowledge, this transcendental knowledge. Krishna is going to share something very important about that. So Bhagavan Sri Krishna replied to Arjuna's question about having that Vivaswan is much older than you. You're only, apparently Krishna was born at a certain time on this earth, and he was here for a few years. And he says, wait a minute, how is this possible? So then Krishna replies, many, many births, both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot. I am unborn, and my transcendental body never deteriorates. Very important point to note. My transcendental body, his body, the form that is standing in front of Arjun and talking to Arjun, is what he's referring to as his transcendental body. In other words, Krishna did not come in a physical body, but rather in a spiritual body. Now you say, what is a spiritual body? Spirit. Spirit, which when our soul leaves the body, right, that is spirit. If that soul could make itself visible, you would be observing a transcendental body. Now Krishna, being the Supreme Being, makes himself visible to Arjun and to all the people in that time, showing and revealing his true self. So he says, I am unborn. Aja. Aja is unborn. Although I am unborn, and my transcendental body never deteriorates. Therefore, it's never subject to old age, disease, or death. Krishna was on this planet for 120 years, yet looked like a 16-year-old, right? Even at the age of 120. So we would all like to be that way. And in fact, as souls, we are that way. As souls, that is why we long to stay youthful. That is why we hate it when we start aging. And we wonder, what the heck's going on with me? Because we too have transcendental bodies, right? So spiritual bodies, that when we leave this body, those bodies, those spiritual forms are apparent. Now, they're not necessarily visible to the human eye, because the human eye can only perceive within a limited frequency. But they are visible to those who are of transcendental vision. So, Krishna says, although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, although I am the Lord of all sentient beings, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. And then he gives a reason why he comes, not just for the sake of showing up and showing off or something like that. He says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamiyaham. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in dharma. Now we've talked about dharma before. Dharma is sometimes translated as religion, but actually it goes far beyond any religion, and that's why I've chosen to use the original word in Sanskrit, because that word means, it really refers to the innate, the intrinsic nature of who we are. Dharma, unlike religion is something external, whereas dharma is something internal. Religion is something you do. Dharma is something you are. It is the innate quality of a thing. So if I say fire is hot, sugar is sweet, water is wet, that's their innate quality. What is the innate quality of the soul, of you? What is your innate quality? And that is only discovered as we peel off the layers of the ego and we discover the true nature of the soul. Then you meet who you really are. Till that point, you've only known your body. You've only known your mind. You haven't got to know yourself. And people talk today about wanting to love themselves, wanting to know themselves. They study personality types and so many other ways in which to get to know themselves. Even in astrology, tries to tell you who you are. But you'll never know who you are until you peel off the layers of all that you think you are, because that's the ego thinking what you think you are. That's your ego. And you find out who indeed you actually are, your innate self. That innate self is what dharma is indicating, the discovery of that. So Krishna is saying, whenever and wherever there is a decline in dharma, the teaching that helps you get to your innate self, or your soul, and a predominant rise of adharma. Adharma could be called irreligion, could be called sinful activity, whatever, but primarily it is about people going off the path of spiritual advancement. When there is a rise of adharma, at that time I descend myself. Right? It's fascinating to think that that which is the creator of everything would take so much trouble for all of us, would care about each and every one of us, that we don't get lost out here, that we don't get stuck in this world, that we make it back home, back to God. That is the intent with which Krishna comes, to show that mercy, that compassion, that kindness to all of us. He says further, in order to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish dharma, I advent myself millennium after millennium. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode. Let's go over that very carefully. Janma karma chame divyam, one who knows of my janma, my birth, the transcendental nature of my appearance or birth, my activities, my karma, and realizes that they are divyam, janma karma chame divyam. The person who understands this does not, upon leaving the body, take birth again in this material world. Punar janma navidya. We do not take birth again, but attains my eternal abode. Think about that. That he says one who understands the transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance in this world and his activities. Now, someone was asking me the question the other day, well, why does God need to have activities, and why do we care about these activities? And I said, look, it's about Leela. Leela means story. Story is activity. Stories are something we're all fascinated by. We love to know what is the story. We want to share the story of our life. We want to hear the story of other people's lives. And it's fascinating to us. We are a culture, a civilization, a being that thrives on stories. So much as that is the case, God appears to show us His Leela. His and her Leela, Radha and Krishna. They appear with their entire entourage to show us what does it mean like to be with God. Is God just some old man sitting in the clouds playing on a harp, or is God vibrant, dynamic, playful, sensual, fun-loving, joyous? This is the option Krishna is showing us through His Leela, His pastimes. This is who I am. Come, join me. I want you to be with me. I want you to join in these pastimes and enjoy with me. So He appears not only to establish dharma, but also to attract us back home, to show us the way, and then to show us exactly what lies in store for us. And therefore He says, such a person who has understood my appearance and activities never takes birth again in this material world, but returns to my eternal abode. Just as we are eternal, there is an eternal abode from where we came. Because we are eternal beings, we find it artificial to die. We find it unnatural. We don't want to. Even the smallest of creatures, from the cockroach to the insect, does not want to die. Why? Because it's against our very nature. We are meant to live forever. It is who we are. It is intrinsic to us. To be youthful forever is intrinsic to us. That's why we don't like to age. To know things is intrinsic to us. It is the nature of our soul. So once we understand where this is coming from, then we can put ourselves on the right path. But it's not enough just to believe, and it's not enough just to read and to have knowledge. Krishna does qualify that it's not enough. The next verse he says, being freed from attachment, fear, and anger. So this is very, very important. It's not just about faith, it's not just about belief, but actually experiencing the results of being freed. So from that knowledge comes these outcomes. Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger. Being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me. Many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me. Thus they all attained transcendental love for me. So he's pointing out here that this is not something new, I'm telling you. This is something that has been going on for thousands of years. Many persons in the past have attained this. It's not just that one or two people can attain this. No, all of us can attain this. And that is the whole point of bringing this information to you. That is why he brings it to us, and that is why we pass it on, so that everyone may attain this possibility. Now, I know that there have been claims made in different religions as well, and those are valid as well. When they say that no one comes to God except through Christ, so be it. The Guru takes you to God. That's what we have in the Vedic tradition. The Guru is the one who teaches you and shows you the way back to God. And so it is with anyone who is teaching that path. And one needs to respect that. So it's not the first time that someone said that if you follow me, I will take you to God. This has been said way before them. 3000 BC, Krishna was saying these very words, right? All of them, Krishna says, as they surrender to me, right? So all these people who came in the past, as they surrendered to God, I reward accordingly. So according to the level of surrender, they are rewarded. What are they rewarded with? Becoming free from attachment, fear, and anger. Developing the results of a spiritual path. If you're following a true spiritual path, this is what will happen. You will become free of fear. You will become free of attachment. And because you are free of attachment, you will also become free of anger. Anger for what someone else did to you. Oh, this person hurt me. Now I'm feeling all so traumatized, as they say nowadays. But no, you will become free of all of that. So all of them, as they surrender unto me, I reward accordingly. In other words, he reciprocates our efforts. Reciprocates. And we begin to see the results. Everyone follows my path in all respects. As I had said to you earlier, that every path, whichever path anyone is on, is ultimately leading to God. Even if you've gone away, if you're an atheist, doesn't matter. It's just a matter of time. You can't be an atheist without somewhere believing in God. Otherwise, if God, I'm not an Santa Claus. If you say I don't believe in Santa Claus, because there's nothing like that. There's nothing like that. But if you actually disbelieve in something, well, now you are, in a sense, referring to its possible existence. If so, why not investigate that? And before you just go around disbelieving something, why not investigate it? Why not find out if there is any possible truth to it? Right? So Krishna continues here. He says, Chatur varnam maya srishtam guna karma vibhagasaha. Now, remember, at some point we've talked about this, that there was what was known as the caste system in India, and this verse specifically talks about that. Chatur varna. In his time, in the Vedic time, 5,000 years ago, and before that, this system existed. Not a caste system, but rather a system based upon guna and karma, one's aptitude and one's activities. Based on that, society was divided into four basic, the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. The Brahmins were the priestly class. The Kshatriyas were the warriors and administrators, like people in government. And the Shudras, or the people involved in commerce and trade and all of that. And the Vaishyas and the Shudras. Shudras were those who were engaged in the menial tasks. So everybody had their place in society, and no person was considered higher or lower. All of that came later, as the system was corrupted in the present time, Kali Yuga, this age that we live in now, after Krishna left, after he taught all of this. The Brahmins actually stopped teaching to the average people and just engaged them in rituals. And because they stopped teaching this knowledge, they could twist it around any way they liked. And this happened in other religions as well, as the priestly class withheld the information. In fact, I remember watching about King Henry the 8th. And in his time, if someone even so much as read a Bible, they would be killed. They would be burnt on the stake. You were not supposed to read it. And the same thing existed in India. The Brahmins refused to let anyone learn the Vedic knowledge. This knowledge that you are being given so freely right now was banned. And so as a result of which, the Brahmins could control the way they interpret it and whatever they want. So they wanted their own children to become Brahmins and become the most revered class of people. And then the kings wanted the same thing, and so everyone kind of fell into this, especially those in power fell into this idea. And then came the caste system, which was a complete corruption. And people say, oh, what a good thing it is that it was destroyed. No, Krishna was not trying to create a caste system. He was simply saying society needed to be organized a certain way. And everyone had the opportunity for liberation. Everyone had the chance to become free. It didn't mean that a Brahmin or a priest had a better chance. No, it didn't matter. It didn't matter that a man had a better chance or that a learned person had a better chance. No, none of that. In fact, if you look at some of the people who were dearest to Krishna while he was here, they were the gopis. They were women. They were uneducated. They had no knowledge, but they had a heart full of love for Krishna. And that right there was their absolute and most important qualification, not their position or their in some caste system or whatever, not at all. So let's get that out of our thinking. It's often come up in these classes, and I'm sure it's come up for a lot of people. So it's a valid question and one to understand carefully. So Krishna says here, according to the 3 modes of material nature, which we've discussed earlier, and the work ascribed to them, the 4 divisions of human society were created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So although there are many things that Krishna does, he doesn't stay attached to them. He remains the non-doer. Okay? The doing is for us. We can take his instruction or not take it. We can act according to it or not act according to it. The choice is always ours. He remains the non-doer. Right? And for us, it is spiritual evolution is about getting to that place of becoming the non-doer ourselves. Not to become God, but to become as he is, to become godly or godlike. So now let's go into the process. What is the process of getting here? The intricacies of action, as we talked about last time in Karma Yoga, we discussed that quite a bit. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what inaction, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. So, it's a powerful lesson to learn. What is action? What is inaction, and what is forbidden action, right? Inaction is actually the most action we know, right? And every action breeds karma. Inaction is that kind of activity which does not breed karma. And forbidden action is that which produces negative karma. As in hurting someone, as in acting against the free will of someone. That produces a negative karma. And one must then suffer the consequences of that. And the next verse is really interesting. One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction, and is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction is intelligent among men and is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. So let's try and understand what Krishna is meaning by this. It's a very interesting point. What is when one sees action in inaction, right? And inaction in action. So this is about being able to understand what is akarma. Akarma means inaction inaction, meaning while you are engaged in activities, yet you are not incurring any karma. Now, why should one do this? Why should one not incur karma? Because karma binds you to the cycle of birth and death, and you have to keep coming back here to keep reliving your karma. So when you start engaging in actions that are no longer generating karma, then you have become free from the karmic cycle. So therefore, one who sees inaction in action, you're able to actually work in that spirit, and begins to understand that what is action in inaction. That is to say, how do you not pollute that? How do you stay free from karma? Such a person is truly intelligent and is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. So you may say, oh, this person is working, this person is doing so. They're not just sitting in meditation, they're not just sitting back and, doing nothing like a monk or sitting in a forest and meditating 24/7. No, this person is doing stuff, is engaged in business, is engaged in all kinds of activity. How can you say this person is free from karma, liberated from the cycle of birth and death? Yes, you can, absolutely. And that's why Krishna has been talking about karma yoga. Now he's talking about Gyana Yoga, which is the yoga of knowledge and wisdom, and showing you how these two come together. Right? So knowing how to act in this world is very, very important. One who is in full knowledge, whose every act is devoid of the desire for sense gratification or kama, is said by sages to be a worker whose karma has been burned by the fire of perfect knowledge. So whose every act is devoid of desire. Right? What kind of desire? The desire for enjoyment, just to enjoy yourself. And who is to be a worker whose karma has been burnt up. So having the knowledge and being engaged in works that are not for your selfish gratification. Now you might think, wait a minute, everything I do is for my sense gratification, is to enjoy my senses. I mean, that's why I work. I work to earn money. I earn money so that I can enjoy my life. You're telling me that I should not enjoy my life, then why should I work? Okay. The purpose for being here needs to become clear. The purpose for being on this earth is not about enjoying this earth. Yes, there is much to enjoy here. And yes, there are wonderful things. But all enjoyment also comes with suffering. It is a back and forth process. Right? To whatever degree you're enjoying, there will also be suffering. Perhaps an equal and opposite amount. But these two are linked together. When you talk about going on a path of liberation or freedom from the cycle of karma, you talk about going beyond mere enjoyment. And so for that, Krishna is talking about making all your activities transcendental, such that everything you do transcends. Now, even in business, people know this. If I work simply to be able to accumulate profits out of people and don't give them value, well, then sooner or later, people are not going to like that, and the reaction of that is going to be going to stop caring about my product. I have to care about my customer. I have to care about the people. Similarly, someone who is engaged in government needs to care about the people, or they're going to vote that person out. So it's a question about becoming selfless, and this is a big part of what this means, akarma, is learning how to become selfless. Although our world very much promotes right now the idea of selfishness and narcissism, where everyone's out for themselves, this ancient wisdom is about how to become selfless, about how to work in a spirit of service, in a spirit of devotion, in a spirit of being there for others rather than only being there for yourself. So enjoying your senses will happen. Even as you engage in serving God or serving humanity or serving your family for that matter, you're still enjoying the journey, you're enjoying the food, you're enjoying everything, but your mood, your spirit, your thought is about giving, not taking. That's at the heart of it. Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities and ever satisfied and independent, he performs no karma, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. think we've talked about that. Such a person of understanding acts with mind and intelligence fully controlled, giving up all sense of proprietorship over possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by karmic reactions. Now you might have an objection there, the bare necessities of life. Ooh, that's going to get you, but wait, be patient. The next verse clarifies it. He who is satisfied with gain that comes of its own accord. This is important. It's not about working to have more. It's not about work being attached to having more. Whether you have more or you have less, it is about being satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord. This is at the heart of the point he's making here, right? Being satisfied with whatever you have. Becoming free from duality. Duality means I like this, I don't like this. I want to be rich versus I want to be poor. Not being attached to either of it. Not being attached to not having anything and not being attached to having everything. Right? Being free from duality, and who does not envy, who is steady both in success and failure, is never entangled although performing actions, and never entangled in karma although performing actions. So this is super important. One who is steady both in success and failure. You will see that the most successful people actually operate this way. They do what they do because this is what they do, right? They don't do it because it will be successful or not. They do it because this is their dharma, this is their calling, this is their nature, this is what they feel called to do. Whether they are an artist or they are a writer or whether they are a business person, they will do what they do without attachment to the fruit. It's not that they're doing it because, I'm going to write a book so that I can become a multimillionaire. Anyone who comes with that attitude, most of the time, isn't going to be very successful. The person who does it from pure joy of doing it, right, that person will inevitably become successful. Whether that is, I hear the same message from YouTubers these days. They talk of the same thing. I've heard the same message from artists. I've heard the same message from business people. When you do it for the sheer joy of doing what you do, and not because, this is what's going to measure my self-worth, my success or failure is going to measure my worth. No, not for that. Is ego-driven. And that will never be successful. Even if you get what you wish, you will still not be successful because somewhere in there you're dependent, you're at the mercy of others, of circumstances, of situations. Because if the market goes up, you're happy, and the market comes down, you're miserable. If your work is liked, you're successful, you feel great, and when it's not liked, you don't. If you're an actor and you become old, now suddenly you no longer feel any sense of worth or value. So in so many ways one could explain how important this is, to become steady both in success and failure, to be satisfied with gain that comes of its own accord, right? If you have any questions, feel free to write them down. I will take up all of that at the end of this, so feel free to make notes or even put them in the chat if you like. Then Krishna goes on to talk about different types of sacrifice. I've kind of shortened it down a bit. He talks of study of the Vedas, sacrifices to demigods, practice of Ashtanga Yoga. These are all sacrifice. He says sacrifice is vital. Sacrifice is what I was talking about, being selfless, giving, right? That's sacrifice. So whether that is the practice of Ashtanga Yoga, or fasting, or sacrificing your material possessions, of donating, of charity, of sacrifice of the mind and senses, right? Instead of indulging the senses, actually engaging them in a higher purpose, in a higher vibration. And sacrifice of the mind, not believing it, not trusting it, but engaging it in a higher cause, in understanding of spiritual wisdom. And the control of breath. And there are some who even control their breath and control their eating to the point where they just go into total trance. So there's many different paths of sacrifice. He says, but most important, and he says all of them, rather, lead to the cleansing of karma. And having tasted the nectar of such sacrifice, they go to the supreme eternal atmosphere. That is mukti, liberation from this material world. Without sacrifice, one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next? So this is such in today's time where everyone is, it's a me culture and everyone wants things for themselves and for their own enjoyment. This comes as a very powerful message saying, no, this is not the way to spiritual growth. This is not the path to spiritual advancement. This path to spiritual advancement comes as we sacrifice, as we let go all of our needs, our wants, our desires, as we let go of all that we think and all that we believe and all that we are, to the more you actually strip off the layers of who you think you are and what you want and all of that, the more you come closer to yourself. And as you come closer to the true self, you also get closer to God. So that is why he says that without sacrifice, one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next? The sacrifice of knowledge is greater than the sacrifice of material possessions. After all, the sacrifice of work culminates in transcendental knowledge. I've tried to explain it here. This is how he's explaining it. That the bottommost level is the sacrifice of possessions, right? That we actually realize that nothing belongs to me. No one belongs to me. Right? So we don't try to hold on to the world. We no longer get attached to the things of the world, but rather we understand that nothing is mine. Everything belongs to God. The second step is the sacrifice of our work. And as we learn to let go our work, we let go of karma. We begin to realize that I'm here, as we were explaining all this time. My work is simply there as a sacrifice, as a service to others or to God. But beyond that is the sacrifice of knowledge, actually letting go what you know and coming to a place where you understand transcendental knowledge and wisdom. That is our doorway to getting to the absolute truth. The absolute truth, what is that? So this is where Krishna goes into explaining how we get to learn the absolute truth. He says, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadakshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshanaha. That you must approach someone who is in knowledge. So he says, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire submissively, render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. So, seeing the truth of your absolute nature, of your true divine self, is not something that is based on intellect, right? It is something that is based upon realization. In Sanskrit, there are two words. There is Gyan, which means knowledge, and there is Vigyan, which means realized knowledge. Knowledge is very easy. You can learn stuff. But Vigyan is the application of knowledge, the realization of knowledge. So we talk about not just knowing about the self, not just theoretical knowledge, but practical application, which is Vigyan, which is the realization. So a self-realized soul, he says, can truly impart knowledge unto you because such a person has seen the truth. How should you inquire? Submissively. What does submissively mean? It means with an open mind. Be willing to listen with an open mind. Be willing to act upon what you're learning. In that way you will learn. In that way you will make progress spiritually. And then he continues. And when you have thus learned the truth, you will know that all living beings are but part of me, that they are in me and are mine. This is the bottom line. When you have thus learned the truth, you will know that all living beings are but part of me, they are in me and are mine. Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. Ocean of miseries meaning this world, the material world. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities or karma. In this world there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has achieved this enjoys the self within himself in due course of time. Now it's important to know that Krishna keeps grounding this information into something practical and discernible, that you can actually see what is the symptom of a person who is truly advanced. And here he explains it very beautifully. Such a person who has achieved, and he says, such a knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism. So you have mystics and all kinds of mysticism, right? All kinds of paths telling you all kinds of different ways. All that is good. But the way you will know you have truly progressed is when you come to the place where you enjoy the self within yourself. When you understand that there is no greater pleasure on this earth than what lies within you. There is no greater joy, there is no greater love, there is no greater achievement than being able to experience that which lies within you. This is the Holy Grail. This within you is the ultimate of all spiritual progress. From here begins your journey to God, because you have understood the most fundamental nature of God by having access to yourself. Now it is no longer a question of belief or faith or trusting someone. You have direct experience of what is the nature of God within you. This is a science, and it begins with knowledge and karma and all that things we were talking about till now, karma yoga, Gyana Yoga, but ultimately it comes to self-realization. That is the destination, and that needs to be very clear. So he continues, we've got just a little more to go. A faithful person who is absorbed in transcendental knowledge, who subdues his senses, quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. For the doubting soul there is happiness neither in this world nor the next. It's a really important point to understand that doubt is such a powerful enemy. Doubt breaks us. We doubt ourselves. We start to develop low self-esteem. We start to really, our ego starts to crumble. If we doubt our partner, we ruin our relationship. It's very difficult to be in a relationship where you doubt that person. You don't believe them, you doubt them. It's very difficult to have a friend like that. And similarly, when it comes to spiritual knowledge, if you are in a place of doubt, clear your doubt. Then practice and try it out. See for yourself. Because as you practice, you will see whether it works or doesn't work. But don't sit in doubt. For the doubting soul there is happiness, neither in this world nor the next. It's very important for us to challenge our doubts. One who has renounced the fruits of action, whose doubts are destroyed by transcendental knowledge, and who is firmly situated in the self, is no longer bound by karma. So this is the way to become free. Free from karma, free from this world. And then Krishna continues, therefore the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharat, stand and fight. So I would say that for most of us, and for all of us, the journey of self-realization is like that battle that Arjuna is in. It is a journey of being able to fight with knowledge, to fight with awareness, not just randomly fight something, but we are ourselves in a battlefield. The battle that is going on is in here. Some people ask, well, is the battle of Kurukshetra metaphorical? And I would say to them, yes and no. Our own lives, everything that's going on in our life is in many ways metaphorical. There's a lesson in there. There is a deeper meaning and significance in there. And therefore you could say our lives, everything that happens to us is actually metaphorical. There is something beyond that which you see. And yet, on the other hand, we can say it is actually happening, right? So it is and it is not. It is metaphorical and it is literal or real. The same applies here. There is an actual battlefield of Kurukshetra. There is an actual evidence of Krishna's appearance. There is evidence of all of that. It can be looked up in all the research that has been done by archaeologists. But what matters more to us is how those teachings apply to us. So there is the literal, that historical Krishna, and then there is the metaphorical incident. So we can say, yeah, the battle of Kurukshetra happened, that was 5,000 years ago. What's that got to do with me? And the relevance is this, because there is a battle going on in your mind, in your head, in your life, even right now. Even as you live right now, you are in that battle. And in that battle, so many things come up. That is why transcendental knowledge is needed. That is why this wisdom is needed. That is what prepares you for how to deal with this world in a way that is going to liberate you and bring you to the place of finding the greatest ecstasy and joy, and make this journey the most beautiful that it can possibly be. So with that, I'm going to end, and I'm going to open things up for questions. And if you have any questions, I hope you've noted them down, and you're welcome to ask. But let's see what you've got.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm. Okay, hold on.
In terms of sense gratification,
mm-hmm.
what do feelings and needs? How does that fit in? Are they sense gratification or?
Yes, they are the gratification of our ego, and that's all right. We have an ego. We need to be able to take care of it, and it's perfectly all right for us to do so. However, it's important for you to understand that if you wish to become free from karma, if you wish to actually become liberated and advance spiritually, then we have to rise beyond the ego. Look, your car needs gas, right? We can't deny the fact that it needs gas. But at the same time, we need to know that you're not your car. Putting gas in your car is not going to satisfy you. It's going to take care of your car. Putting oil in your car is going to take care of the car, but it's not going to take care of you. So in the same way, we need to be able to know that there is more to us than our feelings and needs. Our thoughts, our feelings, our needs, our desires are all generated by our mind. They are concoctions of our mind. Okay? Creations of our mind. And I'm not saying they're not valid. I'm not saying they're not needed. Of course we need them. But we need to know that we are much more than that, and to fulfill that higher self while still taking care of the lower self. In other words, just as you would step out to eat food, right? Just putting gas in your car hasn't satisfied your need, your hunger. In the same way, we need to satisfy our spiritual hunger, which is about being able to understand who we are and what is the source from which we come. In that way, we begin to come to a place that is beyond this world and no longer suffer the way most people do. Is that making any sense?
I just have a quick question, Rohit.
You want to put on the video for a moment?
Oh, sorry, I'm in a really dark
Okay,
room.
no problem,
So
no problem. Go ahead.
I don't
Yes,
think you'd
go
be
ahead.
able to
Ask
see.
your question.
But is this necessarily inconsistent with evolution?
Actually not. You know, the concept of evolution is partially true. That's the interesting part. Evolution does occur, but within a species, not interspecies. One species doesn't turn into another. That part of the evolutionary theory has never been proven. Even in Darwin's thing, he talked about the evolution of the species, but he never was able to show the missing link. That's what it was called, where the ape is turning into the human, and there are these different stages where it's actually happening. The ape remained the ape, the human remained the human. Now, as humans, we have certainly evolved. We've gone in through so many different stages of the Neanderthal all the way up to now. We've definitely evolved. Within apes, there might be such an evolution taking place. Within giraffes, there might be such an evolution taking place, right? But not interspecies. That's where Darwin's own theory because science requires evidence. And a science without evidence is simply a story, it's a mythology. So there is no evidence proving interspecies evolution at all. It just isn't. It hasn't been found in whatever period of time since Darwin first came up with that theory. But there's another kind of evolution that is taking place too, and that is the evolution of consciousness. And that evolution is what we're actually wanting to look at here. So yes, evolution is a thing, and not the way Darwin presented it. That's all.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thanks for your lovely questions. I really appreciate it. To all of you that have been coming here, my deepest gratitude and thanks. And I really, really deeply appreciate your questions, the things you come up with. So we've been talking about the soul in chapter 2. We then talked about karma yoga, right, in chapter 3. And in chapter 4, we're talking about Gyana Yoga, about knowledge. Right? Having this knowledge helps us in being able to understand where we're going. Now, keep in mind that knowledge needs to be applied knowledge. Then it becomes realized. So whatever you're learning here, apply it. Right? Apply it, because Krishna doesn't start off with esoteric stuff. He starts off with practical stuff. That's why he starts with karma yoga. Because we're all engaged in working. We're all engaged in doing things. So that's why he begins exactly from the place where we're at. And in doing, we have certain outcomes that we want. We have certain desires to fulfill, certain needs to fulfill. And Octavio, just as you pointed out, that's exactly what we are all driven by. We are driven by fulfilling our desires. And that's what's created the mess that we're in, a society that is full of giving you more and more things to desire. Giving you new fashions every year, giving you new technological products every year, giving you all kinds of things that you could desire. The objects of desire are endless. And so here we are, like a hamster on a wheel, running. After what? Eventually we get old, we get sick, we die. So what are we running after? We're not going to take any of this with us. It's only here with us for a few years, and that's it. Why not focus our attention, our energy, on that which can never be lost? That which will be our eternal wealth, our eternal asset, our eternal possession. And that is our soul. Because this is the only thing that you take with you when you die. So why not cultivate that? Why not develop that? Why not enhance it? Why not enrich it? Why not make this your truest wealth of all? Any further questions? Any further thoughts or questions about that? About what we've talked about so far, about the Bhagavad Gita? All right. Well, as you know, as I've mentioned, you'll find the recordings on YouTube for any of you that have ever missed anything, or if you've got any previous episodes you want to check out on, go to my channel, the Spiritual Wisdom channel, and you'll find the earlier recordings of our sessions from the Bhagavad Gita. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Jai Shri Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thanks, Rohit.
You're welcome, Mariah. Take care.
Thank you, Rohit.
Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank you.